All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is Thursday. Yeah, I'm finally on track with my days of the week, Bob. For a while there, I was lost. It is MSP Initiative. We have a well, you know what? Some people may not know. This is Bob from Simplex IT. Bob's been. I'm going to have him tell you his history. He has a long, storied one. But Bob's on the ground. He's an MSP. He's been doing this for a long time. And today our topic is co-managed IT, which if you've been paying attention to MSP Initiative sessions lately, this topic has come up. It came up with Rob Ray from Datto. It came up with Ken Patterson from PAX 8. And we decided to bring somebody on board that just lives in this arena. And this is all things co-managed IT. Bob, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing peachy. How about you?
Oh, it's you know what? I'm so happy the weather's actually warm now because for the first part of the year while we were all quarantined, being inside when it was rainy and cold sucked.
That's true.
Really was not my not my friend. But I'm glad that we're in summertime now. Hopefully, things are while we're in the warmer weather, things are kind of trying to get fixed on the COVID side. Which, by the way, where are you located, Bob?
Ohio. Between
Ohio.
Philly and
So So you've been kind of, so I'm based out of Philly, kind of similar situation, I think. How are things now in Ohio for you, COVID style?
It's all perspective. It's all based on if you're asking from a personal standpoint, from an organizational, from a regional, from a whatever. Bottom line is we're fine. From the state standpoint, the governor was aggressive right out of the gate. And everybody has opinions on where that should go one way or the other. There's definitely a mood in the air because I've been doing a lot of LinkedIn messaging and conversation with people. There's definitely a mood in the air of we need to get back to work, along with paralleled with oh crap, this is serious.
Yeah.
Whereas before it used to be one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
It's either, wow, this is serious, we can't get back to work, or no, this is not that big a deal, we don't have to get back to work. Now there's kind of a reality that's hitting, and it's interesting conversation.
No, fair enough. So like today, how's business? I mean, you're in the trench, you're doing the work with your team. How are things going?
We're doing fine. From the stand, especially from the standpoint of compared to who, so our MSP, we live, we eat, and we breathe based on the success of our clients. If our clients do poorly, we can do everything we can, but the cash flow stems from them. Thankfully, we've had a couple of clients who have had some issues, but by and large, everybody has been okay-ish. And we've had some who have ramped up some things, and we have some who've pulled back some. But again, bottom line is we're still on the pot. We're going to have, we had our best 6 months for the first 6 months this year. We're not going to quite hit our target that we had for the year, but it was still double-digit growth. So I'm okay with that.
Given the circumstances,
yeah.
That's fantastic news, Bob.
Yep.
Some other MSPs aren't in as good a shape, so that's good news. So, Bob, for everyone that doesn't know who you are, hasn't bumped into you at an event over the years or in one of these online, Zoom, WebEx, Teams types things, why don't you give everybody a little bit of background, right? When did you get into IT services and bring us to current?
So first of all, I'm a jerk. Okay. The term I use often is crotchety old geek. Basically, I've been in IT since I'm old, also old, been in IT since early 80s and started Simplex IT, the MSP, in 2007. I've been a CIO, been an IT director, been developer, done all that sort of stuff. And over the past I wrote my first book, CEO Survival Guide to Information Technology, about 2.5, 3 years. Then 2 years ago, started getting into this CoMITs thing, which I suspect we'll talk about at some point, with the MSP's Survival Guide to Co-Managed IT Services. And then the latest book just came out a couple months ago, called I Don't Want Your Job, which is specifically written for the internal IT person who we be promoting or marketing co-managed IT to.
So by the way, where are all these books? Are they on Amazon?
They are on Amazon. They're here on my desk too. So I've got the CEO's Guide, which should be on. We should have it on Audible next month, is what we're hoping for. Then the MSP Survival Guide and the I Don't Want Your Job. But yep, Amazon.
It's good reading. That's good reading. When do you have time to write books, Bob?
It's weird. The first book I wrote, and it's a weird story, and I want you to know that I am a 3-time Amazon bestseller. Okay?
Wow.
Absolutely. And if you take anything away from this conversation, it is not very hard to be an Amazon bestseller. Okay. I mean, just because I did it 3 times. So, but it's one of those where you get into a certain rigor of writing, and my writing style is pretty much how I talk.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to remember who you're writing for and who you're writing to. So if you're able to write in a conversational style, as opposed to an extremely analytical, scientific, almost engineering style, the conversational style is a hell of a lot easier to actually do. So it's not as impressive as it seems.
No, I think you're downplaying it, but that's good. No, hey, you deserve a pat on the back. Not many people have taken the time to actually write and publish stuff. And quite frankly, it's technology is an interesting, business, right? It's very wide. There's a lot of angles to it. And I think IT services has morphed dramatically, especially over the last, since the 2000 till now, right? The last 20 years.
Well, and the way I refer to it when I talk to people about this is when I first started, because again, I'm old, thanks for bringing it up again, is IT was all about the T. It was all about the technology, is how fast of a processor, how much memory, how much disk space. Oh my God, we're going to network the damn things? All of that. It was absolutely about the technology. The information side of it, we pretty much were just automating what humans were doing. Mm-hmm. So the I part of it was almost secondary. Then you get, and everything up till, I would say, the mid-late 90s was really all about the technology. Then the information started getting interesting. We started doing things that we couldn't do before with information. We started getting reports. We started making decisions, all that kind of fun stuff. So it became more information and technology sharing equal responsibility. And then now the big one comes. Now, what can we do with information? Mm-hmm. And now it's a whole thing about the whole concept of now we can be so much more in tune with what's going on around us, more so than we ever could before, which in a lot of cases is not a great thing because we can't handle it, both from an organizational and an individual standpoint. But in some cases, we really, really can. And that's where it's the handling of the information, I think. And you look at it from services, most of the services are coming out of the information side, not the technology side. The technology side is now we're evolutionary. The information side of things, that's where the revolutionary stuff is coming and is going to continue to. I have an opinion on everything.
No, hey, Bob, that's why we brought you on.
I thought you lost a bet.
No, I did not lose a bet. So we've talked to a few people. We've been doing these twice a week now since March. Co-managed IT came up in a couple of contexts, but let me start with the kind of umbrella of it. We started talking about, hey, businesses being affected. How's this going to help, or hurt the bottom line? What are people going to do to pivot? We all heard about work from home. We all heard about work from anywhere. And then this topic came up, which is maybe there's some pivoting involved, right? How many people were really working? Like, I feel like MSPs largely believe that they're displacing internal IT. That's a lot of the marketing that's been pushed out forever.
Historically, that was what that entire concept was based on.
Exactly. So now all of a sudden the concept of, well, if the SMBs or a lot of these small businesses may not reopen, may just close up and be done, and some of these people are going to lose business at the bottom, does it make sense to start looking upstream? And so then the conversation was, well, we largely don't go past a certain point because at that point there's somebody or somebody's, a department of people that are handling IT on the ground for companies. This is effectively what we're about to talk about, which is co-managed IT, which I would say most people that categorize themselves as MSPs don't do a lot of. I mean, maybe they are now compared to the last 5 or 10 years, but I feel like this is a topic that's come up, which is, hey, we have the tools, we have skill set, we can complement these people upstream, especially if the idea that the people inside that were handling IT for these larger orgs may be cut down, right? Maybe the department's been reduced. Maybe the person's been laid off that was handling technology, or maybe we can augment what they lost in terms of headcount, right? So this all comes into this arena, right, of co-managed IT. So I'd love to take you. I mean, listen, I know you have a lot of history in this. I know you've been doing this particular practice for a long time. And I feel like one of the challenges, and I'll open it this way, what is the biggest drawback you've heard over the years to why people are so skittish trying to actually make this happen, trying to do co-managed?
So there's three. And I'll never answer a simple question with a simple answer. So first of all, I think, and again, the traditional MSP model as it was first introduced and first popularized was a net job killer, not a job creator. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, we're going to do the work of more IT people than we employ. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And I think as of about 2 or 3 years ago, the companies that wanted to outsource their IT were pretty much done. I mean, with some exceptions, but by and large, if they wanted to outsource their IT, it was done, which meant we were transitioning more and more to a MSP fighting MSP for the job and for the business. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of the first issues, is that we have to get out of that mindset, that that's the only type of business we're looking for. The second issue is one of parallelism. And what I mean by that is that, so the first time I talked formally about co-managed was at a Robin Robbins thing about two years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. And I talked about it. And then about 3 months later, I was at IT Nation in Orlando, and I talked about it. And in both cases, I got about 1/3 of the people who said, yeah, they had a co-managed client. And all of them had no clue as to how they got that. It kind of, somebody contacted them. Hey, we have a particular need. We just want you to take over our help desk. We just want you to do this. And it was not demonstrable. It was not repeatable. It was not where you could use you could have your co-managed methodology and your pure MSP methodology working together. So it almost was like we're selling by exception, which goes completely against the MSP model. We want to do the things exactly the same.
Yeah, it's not a recipe that can be reoccurring. Yeah,
exactly. So, and when I talk to people, at the last IT Nation, or when I was out at DataCon in France, more and more MSPs have a co-managed client. It's right now, I would say it's well over 50%. However, almost all of them are, like you have your token friend, your token this or token that. We have a token CoMITs client where they have an internal, but we figured out some way to make it work, which means that if you start talking about scaling or repeating this thing, it's going to be tough to do. And then the final issue is the whole tool set, because organizations that have internal IT departments often, and this is where it gets tricky, have their tool set. So what are you going to bring to the table? Are you basically, and there's solutions to this, but you have to keep this in mind. If they're coming in and coming into you and say, hey, we want you to take over our desktops. By the way, we already have our monitoring, we already have our ticketing, and we've just renewed our endpoint protection for 3 years. And we're only going to be using this remote yada, yada, yada. So all the tool sets, which means also not just the tool sets and licensing, but also the skill set that your technicians have, what happens to that? And that's one of the biggest challenges as well that you got to go through. And then, and actually I'll go with a fourth, the big one, they don't trust you because you're here to take their job. That's the whole point of a managed service provider. And the first time I spoke on CoMITs, and again, this was at the Robbins thing. If the guy ever, if you're listening, come find me one of these days, because I got to apologize because I have used this story so often. This one guy came up to me, and I'm talking about trust. I'm talking about relationship. I'm talking about mutual support, working together, all that kind of fun stuff. And that's because that's the key point at the end of the day. And this one guy comes up to me afterwards and says, dude, you are so right. Then when they screw up, you're right there to take over the rest of the work. No. It has to be a trusting relationship, especially if you're going to try to get these people to give you testimonials and the like, so that you can go to other people and go, look, we're not bad. We can cooperate. We can work together.
That's very interesting. Like, what are your best tips to convince the inside guy that you're not there to steal their job?
Prove it.
How?
I mean, what can you do to help them now? So, and part of it's been screwed up a little bit on there's been this virus thing going on. I don't know if you knew about it or not. Just a smidge. So one of the things that we've done is we put together a breakfast, which obviously we can't do right now. And we haven't decided whether we're going to do it online, but it was called 3 ways to improve your IT without a consultant. And it was a 2-hour session. And all we talked about was ways to improve your documentation, ways to identify single points of failure within your organization, and ways to improve your communication with management. Okay. 3 topics that were specifically to help that small IT guy or gal to improve their operations, how they did things. No strings attached, no nothing. And then so, okay, what's your call to action? Our call to action was, I want to spend an hour and go over this stuff with you. I want to go over the things that we just discussed specific to your needs. And then give me 5 minutes to talk about co-managed. That was it. So the whole point is, I'm going to put my cards on the table. I'm going to do things I can do to improve your situation, to improve what you've got. I'm going to do those things as strongly as I can. And then I want to talk to you about a partnership. So by going that route, now that's our approach. That's our approach. That worked pretty well for us. We had a pretty good turnover rate as far as people signing up for that and actually signing up for the business. We got about a 20 or 30. We ended up with about 15 people on average. We were only able to run it twice before, again, the virus, happened. And we got about 15 people, and about 20% signed up for it. And I think two of those people ended up actually signing up with us for a co-managed type of site. But then the other thing is testimonials. Testimonials, because if you've got IT people that will go, yeah, I brought them on board, I'm still at my job and I'm willing to admit it. That's a good thing as well.
All right. So I'm assuming every conversation is slightly different because everybody's internal situation is different. How do you build the menu of services and figure out the math, to actually present something for CoMIT?
Relatively speaking, it's easy because we do it ahead of time. In terms of, here's our pure MSP solution. This is it. The question is, Brent, see, I'll get to your question in a sec, Brent. Especially since you think I'm a superhero. It's like, seriously, get better comic books, okay? The issue is, so we'll take a look at our inventory. Here are all the tools, all the techniques, all the things that we would bring to a pure MSP situation. We're going to do the exact same thing for a CoMITs. We will just give that internal IT folks access to our tools. Okay? And the issue is so somebody said, well, we already have antivirus. Well, that's true. How well is it implemented? How much time, how much expertise have you, one or two person shop, spent actually implementing it and doing it as a best practice? We've done a ton of work on that. And you're not just getting the tools. So we basically have three models of what we call CoMITs. One is full CoMITs. That's essentially where we lift the internal IT folks up. We give them access to all of our tools, the whole suite of inventory, and you've got access to it, all that, boom. Now, go forth and support. The second is what we call desktop CoMITs. That's where the internal IT, the exact same thing. We still put all of the tools there in play, all the inventory in play, and then they're responsible for the desktops and the end users. We're responsible for the servers and infrastructure devices.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third would be server CoMITs, which is exactly the reverse. Now, in each of those cases, the license cost of our products are exactly the same.
Yeah, for sure.
And in one case, everything is shoved over to them. And in the other two cases, it's split off, where you can kind of say half, depending on your definition, desktops and end users over here, servers, infrastructure over there, or vice versa. And in all three cases, if there's something that the internal IT folks have a question on, the question is included in the pricing. We never want to nickel and dime them, because that's a huge complaint we get. So you want to do a devil's advocate, you want to ask us questions about it, you want to run something by us, you want to get some advice, whatever, that's included, no charge. If it's something that you're supposed to be, internal IT is supposed to cover though, but you want us to do it, escalate the ticket, which is easy because you've got the tickets because you're using our ticketing system. Escalate the ticket, that's you saying, we want you to do this, bill us.
Got it.
So you've just approved it for hourly time and material work. So we can then take the stuff that we're going to be responsible, and we'll price that roughly along the same lines as we would if it was a pure MSP. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, you've basically gone backwards from like you've done the metals, right? Bronze, gold, silver type approach.
Yeah.
But you're working backwards from how much time and responsibility are they taking over?
Right. Exactly. So what we're basically doing is we're saying, whether you look at it from a strength or a weakness standpoint, what are your strengths, internal IT folks, that you bring the best value? You know your users. You know the applications, the stuff out on the shop floor. You know all that stuff. So desktop CoMITs is probably going to be the best bet for you, because you guys know that, but you don't know servers. Because there's never been a budget to send you, and the stuff is different, and blah, 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 or you don't know how to do Azure or AWS, you don't know whatever, that's okay. We'll handle that stuff. A similar situation could be, boy, our end users are all over the place. They have wild needs, and our techs are really good at the network stuff and all that, but they're not good with the soft skills. And they wouldn't know how to do a mail merge to save their butt. Fine, that's great. You reverse that. Or it could be, our people are actually pretty good, but we just need to standardize. We need to have some automation tools. We need to have, in which case the full makes sense. So all those three pretty much handle a majority of those types of circumstances and situations. And you can also kind of put a cherry on top as far as how you handle the virtual CIO.
I was just about to ask, like, how do you handle, are you still doing quarterly? Are you still doing, presentations to management? Like, how is that whole thing go?
That depends on the organization. So we've got organizations that have CIOs. Okay. And in which case I'm their alter ego. I'm their devil's advocate. So I had one conversation with a CIO a week ago, 2 weeks ago, where we were going over, he was having some real trouble getting his peers to accept some responsibility for doing some of the IT stuff. And I basically, because I'm an expert at being lazy, I was telling him, well, have you tried going this route in terms of working with them and always giving them some homework and blah, 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 standard CIO 101 stuff. And that was very useful for him in order to take it and move with that. Another case, I was working with another CIO more of an IT director or the like, but she was having real trouble because they were taking some of her power away in terms of management. But she and I sat down, I kind of went over it, and actually they were taking over and doing some non-IT stuff that she was being saddled with.
I see.
Which I'm saying, look, volunteer to be part of it, but this is a good thing, yada, yada, yada. And then I've got another client who the internal IT is a level 1 and a level 2 guy. In which case I'm doing more of the CIO. So I can, that one that you need to have a little bit of finesse, but that's always the case for the virtual CIO. In some cases, I will be the person talking with management with them. In other cases, I'm going to be the person behind them whispering in their ear. Whatever works. The only thing you don't want to do is you want to make sure that it never comes off to the internal IT people as in you're brushing them aside and talking to management.
Got it.
Because that you want to avoid, because especially for the internal IT folks who are basically abandoned stepchildren. They often get that where they will have been saying something to management for years and management ignores them. And then a consultant comes in out of nowhere and says it once. And they're like, you're the most brilliant person I've ever heard in my life. Why can't I have people like you instead of these morons in IT? And that happens often. And it's a human nature thing. We never, never, never want that to happen. So we make sure before we make any kind of proposals or conversation with management that the IT people are in on it.
Yeah, the internal politics of some of these companies are crazy, Bob.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And a lot of cases, they're that way because we suck at it.
Oof. Wow. Okay. Fair enough.
We have very poor communication skills. IT people love to be right. We don't care much about whether we're understood. And also, a lot of us will either take on responsibilities that are not IT,
right?
Because we know better, and it's easier to do that than actually explain to the end users. Or we will just curl into a corner and do what we're told.
Fair enough, especially with HR, right? Onboarding, offboarding is probably the biggest one.
Oh yeah, and especially since HR looks at it as that's an IT issue. No, it's not. You tell me how you want that person's historical email to be accessible. You tell me how you want that as far as age, whatever. The technology part, oh yeah, absolutely, we'll do that. But you need to tell me what the requirements are ahead of time.
No, fair enough. So I don't want to, Brian's over here, like literally the champion in the chat. So I don't want to forget his stuff. He said, can you go over what exactly your inventory is?
Right. So the inventory, again, is a combination of all the stamps we use, the software, tools, methodologies, portals, all of that kind of fun stuff. Everything that you use that allows and enables your technicians to work on the technology and work with the clients, how can we give that in some way, shape, or form to the internal IT folks? And some products work better than others. And actually, there's a Facebook group called, oddly enough, Co-Managed IT Services. That just go ahead and join that group. I run the group, so beware. And I put a video up there about 2 weeks ago that actually talks specifically about what makes a good CoMITs vendor. So, but the whole idea is essentially, from a CoMIT standpoint, the internal IT person is an extension of your department, of your techs. And your techs can be an extension of their IT department, depending upon the perspective.
So how much training are you giving these people on the RMM or the ticketing system or the security platform? Like, how deep are you going here?
It really depends on the product. So we did a 2-day on-site, here at our office, training for the CoMITs techs. We had about 8 or 9 techs here for it, and we went over. And we're a ConnectWise Manage and a Datto RMM and Sophos on the security and IT Glue and Auvik and blah, blah, blah. And we split everything all over the place. Now, and here's one of the catches is that when we talk about the CoMITs vendors, some vendors are better than others in terms of their product and in terms of their training. So ConnectWise Manage has their Streamline IT, which
Right.
is kind of a client for, now it's a decent product, but they haven't touched it in years.
It's true.
And it is poorly documented, and it is somewhat limited, and there's no training for it for all purposes. So what we can do, though, is we can create a ConnectWise University account, which then gives, and we can specify some particular training to the clients. So we can take care of that. IT Glue has the MyGlue, and Auvik has some training as well. So we basically go through that, go over that, and make that available. Here's the thing. Since we are building a relationship, and that relationship is going to be ongoing, this is not a fire and forget situation. This is not something where we're going to leave you alone with these tools and all that kind of fun stuff. I would love to actually set up some training over the next couple of months so that they are better in tune with how to work with the tools. Because remember, one of the key things when we talk about MSPs is we want to be sticky. We want to be as sticky as we freaking can. And I mean sticky in a good way for once. In that we want to have it so that the client is so entangled with us that it would be painful for them to stop the relationship. Now, for a long time, there were two types of stickiness. There was has stickiness, because, if they kick you out, they have to give you the servers and the desktops and all that kind of fun stuff. And then there was the stickiness that comes from being nice, and giving good service. Well, this adds another layer of stickiness. That's the stickiness where this is how the IT department is productive. So the way they do their job, and they can't just go out and buy new hardware or buy new tools. And you now have, and I often use the ham and eggs metaphor. So if you have a breakfast and you have ham and eggs, and you want to know about the difference between involvement and commitment, look at the chicken and the pig. The chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. And that's how the internal IT people are. They'd have to buy into this relationship. If they don't buy into the relationship, it will not work. And I've often said that the only thing worse than a good CoMITs lead getting away is a bad CoMITs lead signing. It is not, we've gone through it. It ain't pretty. And these weren't bad people or bad companies, but they didn't buy into the idea of our way is the way we're going to do things moving forward. There has to be buy-in on that.
So how much, are you allowing the internal IT folks contact the vendor support directly? How does that work?
For the most part, no. We haven't run into that much where that's been a big issue for us. We would much rather they contact us.
Okay, fair enough. It was, because at the end of the day, you said some vendors are better for co-managed than others. Last thing you want to do is get that, create a wrench right now where there's a conflict there.
Right, but see, here's the thing, and actually, we've had some conversation on the Facebook group today. Different vendors are at different points in terms of adopting to CoMITs, and I don't care whether it's a marketing group or a software as a service or hardware or backup or security or whatever. A lot of companies are out there throwing around the term CoMITs in terms of advertising to MSPs. Ask them what that means. And you're going to find that a lot of people, it's what they mean is it's co-managed. That's what we mean. And there's not a lot to it. Now, the most common of this is what we call silo. And the silo is essentially where you're providing a specific tool, a specific service that is very, very focused, doesn't have a lot of interaction, so it's easy to put in and it's easy to take out. I would put, if all you're doing is managing backups, all you're doing is managing firewalls, all you're doing is endpoint, and I would even put the MSSP concept to a certain degree there, where it's easy to put in and it's easy to get out. And a lot of MSP clients are really referring to that when they talk about CoMITs.
Interesting.
And that's okay in some cases because it may be the best product around, and you may be limited, but you need to make sure that that's made clear to the client, to the CoMITs client.
No, fair. So what gets somebody in trouble when they get into this? I got to assume that your agreement has to be very, very clearly spelled out who's responsible for what, so that you don't get into a finger pointing session.
Well, you first of all have to make sure as best as you can, and I'm being Pollyannish here, that this relationship won't go down to what does the fine print say.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do, everybody's lost. It's just a question of how much. Now, that said, it still needs to. And there's definitely you have to, your mileage is going to vary.
Yeah.
On the one side of the fence, if it's a full CoMITs, really you're providing the tools and you're providing some advice, and then you're doing time and material or project-based.
Mm-hmm.
So your agreement, you should already have agreements that are appropriate in that level.
Yeah.
And beyond that, if you do a full CoMIT, or excuse me, a desktop CoMITs or a server CoMITs, it's roughly the same, but there are some barriers between them, and it will get fuzzy depending upon, if somebody says, oh, gee whiz, this end user has or doesn't have access to this network share. Well, is that a server issue because you have to go change share permissions? Or is it an end user because it's the end user who needs it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have to get down to that level, you will never get an agreement.
Mm.
You're going to have, and this is where you have to talk to your own lawyer and all of that kind of fun stuff. However, most organizations already have agreements like this in place outside of this CoMITs thing. They just may not realize it.
Sure. So let me give you a unique scenario then. Maybe it's not so unique. You have a full CoMIT and they get ransomware. Whole network's down.
Yep.
Is that on you?
What's the agreement? I mean, the agreement should basically state that you're offering these services for them to use. It's up to them to use appropriately.
Okay. So they have to engage. They have to hit the buttons before it starts to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where, in the case of the full CoMITs, they're still responsible. They're basically saying, we want to run our IT, but we want to run it with your tools. So if that company went out and got those tools from third party A, B, C, and D. Now, and again, boy, do I want to stress, your mileage may vary with your legal and all that kind of fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the challenge is also, especially when we talk about cybersecurity, it is a very fluid discussion, as you well know. Because you're having more and more, and as much of an insurance question as it is a legal question, as it is a relationship question. So.
No, it's fair. So if you were to tell somebody who hasn't, you said 50% of the people would raise their hand right now and say they have at least one customer in this format. If you, for the 50% who haven't scratched the surface and are saying, you know what, this may be something I should really start getting into because frankly, I'm concerned that I have a revenue loss otherwise, right?
Right.
Where what's the first step? Where should
first of all, it's the exact same as the other 50%, because of the 50% that have a CoMITs, they probably don't have one that's repeatable or scalable. So that's the first thing. And so the first question, and there's a video somewhere on Facebook or up on my YouTube channel, I think, for this as well. What's your version of CoMITs?
Mm-hmm.
What's your offering? How are you going to do it? How are you going to present it? How are you going to engage your clients? All of that kind of fun stuff. And as much as possible, it needs to parallel your pure MSP offering.
Right.
Because otherwise, you're going to lose out on the profitability. You're going to lose out on the scalability. The rough numbers that I use is whatever size organization you can handle as a pure MSP, you should be able to handle double that size for a co-managed, for a CoMITs agreement, assuming that you can use your methodologies in the pure on that larger organization. Okay, so not only are you able to now go after organizations that have internal IT, but you're also able to go after larger organizations that have internal IT. So there's actually two openings that happen, but you need to, number one, figure out what that approximate CoMIT, because the CoMITs I'm describing, that's ours. And that's what I've described in my book, but it certainly isn't the only way you can work with an internal IT department. And not all MSPs are willing to be this open and sharing. Okay, we absolutely, you talk about what's your superpower, you use the PICA term. Our superpower is we are open, we are cooperative, we don't hide things. We never put passwords on it. No, that's not true. It's always the same password, but the A is an @ sign.
I see.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that. No, but that's our superpower. We do a lot of webinars, we do a lot of sharing, we do a lot of that kind of fun stuff. So an organization that really wants to have that type of open relationship with us is going to be a good fit, which lends itself well to CoMITs. Now, if you take another MSP who's going to have a different culture, who that one may be, no, our best practices are our best practices. That is our bread and butter. That's how we define our value and all that. It's going to be tougher for that MSP to open up and share best practices with an internal IT department without having some kind of almost buffer zone or firewall. So you need to either A, really ramp up the value and the pricing, so it's going to be a much prettier approach than we do, or CoMITs may not be for you.
Right.
But I think any way you slice it, you need to have that. What is our vision of CoMITs? Because if you go to potential clients without your definition of CoMITs, they're going to pitch theirs.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the same.
I've been thinking this the entire way through this conversation. Man, these, like, when you're going into a larger org who has, like you said, they've created policies because they didn't trust the IT person.
Right.
And now you're going in. How do you, like, these permutations of policies could drastically different customer to customer. How do you balance all of that?
Because you don't. You walk away. We had early in the year, there's a municipality that did a request for bid on a co-managed, and they specifically said co-managed, and we're like, we're one of the only, we've got other clients or other MSPs in the area who do co-meds, but no. So we're like, this is ours. This is fan-freaking-tastic, and we're one of the 3 MSPs who were selected to come in. We go in and we talk, and there's the other 2 MSPs. One is a really good MSP, good competitors with us, but they're good people. The third, they just got an MSP a year ago. They don't even know what CoMITs is. So we're talking, and the IT guy just goes on about how wonderful a job he does and how fantastic. And then we look at, and there is nothing best practice about it.
Well, I'm sorry. If everything was so great, why even interviewing people for this?
because they lost a couple of people who were the desktop supports, and they wanted to do the co-managed.
Okay.
So that we would do those things. Okay, cool. I get that. But it was one of those where I want someone to come in and co-manage things exactly the way I do that.
Oh.
And he was he was a nice guy. And actually what he did wasn't bad. Sure as hell wasn't the way I do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't bad. We walked away. And the guy was, no, seriously, we can work together. And we talked with it a little bit. And I don't ask direct questions like, will you be willing to make compromises? In which case, of course I will. Of course. Yeah, exactly. But I asked some other questions around it, and it was just, no, this guy's really proud of what he did. And he had every right to be. But we could tell that was a bad fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, the municipality is an interesting one because usually the person who's doing IT in the municipality is there for a long time. And there's always that, kind of, hey, there's the police side and there's the municipal side. Oh, yeah. And all of a sudden, like, which side kind of won that battle kind of thing. So that's a very unique situation where that person could have been doing stuff that they put in 10 years ago. And the answer is, that's just the way we were told to do it.
Well, and you have the same thing on your classic manufacturing companies as well. In manufacturing, the term we always use is obsolete means it doesn't turn on. And obviously there are some manufacturing companies that are much more advanced than that. We call them fictional. But it's one where, but you can bring in this whole new, and you're spot on where they have this person who's been there for 20 years and really still thinks NT was a pretty good idea. you know, or something that's 20 years old or whatever. That's where you get the 2008 servers are still there. The XP boxes are out on the shop floor because there's a $80,000 machine that will not talk to anything else.
Yeah.
You know, all of that. So that person has this tremendous tribal knowledge, which you just can't replace
Right.
easily, but can't do servers, and you have to upgrade the servers. So there you can come in and really pitch this person, because in a lot of cases, they really want to learn this other stuff. They want to see this other stuff. And you can basically come in and really talk the partnership up. And those are great opportunities. Those are fantastic opportunities to basically partner up and to bring that person up and to essentially be their buddy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they haven't had anybody to talk to in years, and without being afraid that they're going to get replaced and all that. So there's really nuanced approaches on different verticals for this sort of thing.
So, I mean, part of the MSP landscape is just a constant education battle, right? Because the technology is just changing so quick. How often are you workshopping, or like you say you do a lot of webinars and stuff, but like what's the information flow on the next generation, the next greatest? Like how is that information transferred?
So we do a couple of things. We did a couple of things. So we used to have 3 events every quarter.
Okay.
Event number 1 was what we call, and this goes to the core of what your question is, what we call a QCT, quarterly client training. Mm-hmm. All clients are invited, and any employee of any of clients are invited. And we would come up as a half-day thing, and we would come up with 3 topics, and they were taught by techs, not by sales, but they would be 3 topics about how to better use the technology. Mm-hmm. And they may be, usually one of them would be like a CoMITs thing, and the other 2 would be like end users or whatever. And they can be Windows 7 upgrading, why? Collaboration tools, protecting remote users, whatever. And we would give everybody chances to talk to each other. So we would also ask people to, hey, tell us how you're using this stuff, what works, what doesn't work. And that was a reinforcement of the whole, we're open, we're transparent, we're sharing, because nothing was sold. There's no sales pitch whatsoever. Oh, by the way, we would have a list of here's the things that you currently own and the things you currently don't. And if we happen to cover something that you currently don't own and want to talk about it, please let us know. Mm-hmm. You know, but that worked for us very well on a monthly basis. We currently have about 180 videos up on YouTube from webinars that we've done over the past X number of years. So we're constantly doing webinars. We're constantly talking. We also have a Teams channel here that's dedicated solely to our techs and the co-managed techs, so we can swap ideas. And on that, we've got documents. Here's all the training for this, all the training for that, yada, 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 as well as whatever else news is coming up. So the QCT, we do that quarterly. We also bring in clients who we are in the process of making a proposal to. Oh. Because we want you know, yeah, we'll show you the testimonials, but why don't you come in and meet them and talk to them? Plus get a feel for how we share our information, yada, yada, yada. The second month, we would do that the CoMITs breakfast. Mm-hmm. And we would always try to get at least one CoMITs client to attend. Yeah, so they can say, yes, I still have my job. And then the third one, we were doing cybersecurity, just general cybersecurity.
Always a big topic.
Always.
That's,
you know, so that's the way that we do those things. We also do a newsletter, our e-newsletter that goes to about 3,600 people as well. So we're constantly, there's no one thing we do. We're constantly sending all this stuff out.
Fair enough. So how many co-managed accounts do you manage today within your MSP?
Probably got about 12.
Okay. So you expect over the next year or 2, that's going to continue to grow then?
Oh, yeah. It's 50% of our growth now. It has been for 2 years.
Okay. Fair enough. So your position then, not just here in the US, you were in France for data, whatever, this is going to continue to happen globally then?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's everything ends up being a hybrid. Mm-hmm. Okay. Traditionally, we use that to talk about technology. Well, it can be just as much about service delivery. Mm-hmm. So anything we can do to adapt to that model and to that need, because there are things, There are reasons why an internal IT department is better than an MSP. There are reasons why an MSP is better than an internal IT department. Hey, what if we put them together? Wouldn't that be cool? And that's basically what CoMITs gives us the opportunity to do.
Sure. Now, and I would assume that from a tools and math perspective, this gives you more volume to negotiate better pricing on the tools.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those where by some measures, and this kind of goes into the pricing situation, it's actually a very simple equation. Your licensing cost doesn't change at all, whether it's a CoMITs or a pure MSP, because you're still providing the licenses, the product, and I'm talking about cost, not price.
Right.
Okay. But your costs are exactly the same. And then you take a look. So the only cost that's missing, and let's just take a full CoMITs, the only cost that's missing is your tax. So you can do a costing equation for a full CoMITs scenario, and you've got all of the licensing costs, and that's exactly the same way you would cost it out for a pure MSP. But then you figure out, well, what would be the cost of your technicians for that similar stack? And you should be able to figure that out as well. And what we do is we take that cost of the technician, so keep the license cost separate, take the cost of the technicians, and then we'll discount that significantly. We don't eliminate it, because you're still going to have the cost of the technician to manage and maintain those tools. And you're also going to have your technicians who are going to answer the questions of, hey, gee whiz, should I do this? How do I do that? All of those questions. So the discount can be anywhere from 75% to 85 or 90%, depending upon how comfortable you are with how much time your technicians are going to have to spend still working on those things. And that's how, and then now you have your costs. How you come up with your pricing and how you present it, that's up to you. Again, in our case, we pretty much show here's what the pure MSP price would be, and here's the discount you're going to get with the CoMITs, and here's the responsibility that you're going to have. So instead of being $5,000 a month for everything and blah, 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 it's going to be $2,800 a month because you're getting a $2,200 discount because it's a full CoMITs.
I see.
Now, that does get to the point of this will never save anybody money unless you're adding services they didn't have before, or you're replacing people who are no longer with the organization. You've got to look at pain points as far as stuff that they're not doing that you're suddenly going to add, or that they're going to suddenly be safe by some measures or whatever. But pricing, you're never going to be cheap on this, unless they're looking at the alternative is bringing in a full MSP.
Interesting. That's I think people thought, like when I started this, I said the concept coming into this call was, hey, the internal guy might be going away because of cost cutting, or maybe the department's been cut down because of they're trying to be conservative. So a lot of people thought, hey, this is perfect, right? The MSP jumps right in, plugs the gap, and they're just taking money that otherwise would have been allocated to the individual. Now they're paying the MSP. But in this case, you're saying don't go in with that understanding.
Well, it depends. So I think there's 3 opportunities out there that are happening because of this whole work from home, work from anywhere situation. Opportunity number 1 is I think there are going to be companies that were happy with internal IT that aren't happy with internal IT now. So this is going to be like it was a few years ago, where we can replace, and we can do a pure MSP outsource and replace the internal IT. I think those opportunities are coming back.
Okay.
And I can tell you, we're starting to see them. Opportunity number 2 is where that MSP who got the job and you didn't because they were 1/2 of your cost. Well, there was a reason why they were 1/2 of your cost, and it's apparent now. I think there are ways to go to clients who have MSPs, assuming that you've got a good handle on what your offerings are as it pertains to today's reality. I think there's a good chance of displacing existing MSPs as well. Now, those are 2 traditional methods. The third one is they still like their internal IT, but either A, they drop the ball in some way, not enough they want to get rid of them, but this new complexity was beyond them, or they do want to do some downsizing, but not entirely, not wiping everybody out. We had one situation, one of our existing CoMITs ended up, they decided, and they're heavy in the automotive industry, which means they got hit hard. They decided to eliminate one of their desktop support people. And because of that, we ended up doing more work for them. That's absolutely fine. But one of the things I made clear to them when they started talking to me about doing this was that I didn't care what they do at the end of the day. If they want to bring us in to do more work for them, absolutely fine. We'll make more money, but we'll do more work. If they wanted us to help them until they replace this person, absolutely fine. We won't do more work and we won't get paid more, but we'll help them through this, whatever. But we made very, very sure that we were the solution, not the sales pitch.
Got it.
And then I've got another company who has approached me recently, who is just doing some Office 365 licensing through us, and has just contacted me, and they're looking to basically do a full CoMIT, or not a full CoMIT, but where they're going to keep the CIO, and he's considering dropping his tech staff and have us do the rest of it. So those three opportunities, I think, are very much there.
No, that's. I'm glad you laid that out, because quite frankly, I think people had all sorts of different ideas about where this goes. But, understanding the scenarios really helps make sure that you don't oversell and become a little bit snake oily, right, in the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be. And in my book, I go over this stuff, is when you're making a pitch, if you start pitching co-managed and you start pitching co-managed to the internal IT people, you're stuck. To turn over halfway through, hey, we're going to come in, we're going to be your partner, we're going to work with you. Funny story. No, we're going to take over, and you're going to lose your job. I mean, how would you feel?
Not good.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to go in. Now, if you go in with a pure MSP offering, and then halfway through you go, no, actually, this may work out from a co-managed standpoint. That's a different story. That you can do.
Cool. Bob, where can people find you online? You said you had a YouTube, you had a Facebook?
Yep. Facebook is Bob Coppedge, COPP. And let's see, I'll put in the chat. I'll put the page for the CoMITs group. I know this will come as a shock to everybody. I am looking to monetize this. And do so with some one-on-one coaching and essentially access to all of the marketing stuff that we're doing and all of that. I've got a website that's not fully up yet. It should be up in a couple of weeks.
Hey, there's value there, because quite frankly, if people want to fast forward on this, better to start from somebody that knows what's going on than try and recreate it, right?
Yep.
Fair enough. Bob, I'm sure we could have gone for another hour easily on this, but I appreciate you coming on. I found this, I learned a few things, quite frankly, on this. Thanks, Bob. I hope everybody watching this did. And I really, invite people to check out the CoMITs, CoMITs Facebook group. Looks like Bob's super active on there, and some of the stuff we talked about today, there's probably videos referencing this. Appreciate you coming on today, Bob. Appreciate everybody for watching. Again, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern, MSP Initiative webinars, and we hope to see you on Tuesday. Have a good weekend.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.